Alright guys, welcome back to another video today. I know I've been going for a while, but we back at it again. Today we're going to be reacting to the European Union versus Russia 2021. So let's go ahead and get into it.
A lot has changed over the past few years. Change can be good, change can be bad. Let's take an up-to-date look at the military capabilities of the European Union and Russia in the year 2020. The last time we looked at these two militaries, it ended up being a draw with no clear victor. But has time changed that outcome? Is Russia more formidable now than a few years ago? I guess you're just gonna have to keep watching to find out how a war between the European Union and Russia would end. First, let's look at the amount of money the two countries are pumping into their militaries. As we know, the European Union is in tumultuous times. Brexit has been passed, so technically Britain's military assets went with it. It's probably safe to say that if the European Union went to war with Russia, Britain would likely join the side of the EU. But what if they decide not to? What if the United Kingdom wants to stay out of any armed conflict? For argument's sake, we will be keeping Britain and its assets out of this comparison. The European Union spends around $270 billion annually on their military.
Dang.
This is nowhere near as much as the United States, but it is a significant amount. Russia, on the other hand, has a military budget of around $65 billion. The European Union seems to be investing more money in their military. However,
Yo, them numbers, it'd be big difference between them numbers. They don't make no sense. It'd just be big difference, especially between the US and other countries. It'd be crazy.
because more money is being pumped into a military does not make it better. The European Union is facing the challenges that come with many different countries and cultures trying to work together under a set of laws. This can lead to inefficiency and waste. However, a unified Russia under the control of a dictator can make decisions very quickly. It can be argued that this makes things like building a military more efficient. Money aside, let's take a look at the actual capabilities of each military. We'll start with the ground forces since the European Union and Russia share a border. If a land invasion occurred, who would have the upper hand? The answer might surprise you. Currently, the European Union has over 3.8 million personnel. Only 1.5 million are active, leaving around 2.3 million soldiers in reserve. However, if war broke out between the EU and Russia, everyone would be expected to fight. Russia has around 1 million active duty personnel and 2 million in reserve, so Russia has a slightly smaller military when it comes to manpower. This isn't surprising since there are around 446 million people living in the European Union and only around 146 million living in Russia. Just in sheer numbers, the European Union has a slight advantage. But what if the full might of the Russian ground forces were to sweep across the border into Europe? What would Europe need to prepare itself for? It's been well established that Russia has the largest tank force in the world. The Russian military consists of around 12,000.
Yo, the ads always come at the best parts. That's when something about to go down.
950 tanks. This is almost double the number that the EU has. One of the most powerful Russian tanks is the T-14 Armata. This 55-ton beast has a 125mm smoothbore cannon mounted on it. It carries up to 45 rounds. Its powerful engines allow the T-14 to reach a top speed of 56 miles an hour. Most of the Russian tank force is made up of older models, but the T-14 is a formidable tank. The large number of armored vehicles the Russian military has at its disposal, even if they're older, could allow the country to dominate the land battles if war broke out in Europe. The European Union is not totally defenseless when it comes to tank warfare. Both Germany and France have state-of-the-art tank arsenals. Germany has the Leopard 2A5 tank, which has a 120mm smoothbore cannon with 42 rounds, and it can travel up to 42 miles per hour. France has the Leclerc tank, which also has a 120mm cannon and can hold up to 40 rounds. The Leclerc can travel 44 miles per hour on even terrain. Both these tanks are powerful, yet the T-14 has a larger cannon and can move faster. In a one-on-one fight between the tanks, the T-14 seems to have the upper hand. Also, the Russian tank army in general has more vehicles. If the only fighting to happen in war between the European Union and Russia was tank warfare, Europe might be in trouble. In today's day and age, an entire battle can be won or lost in the skies. The best way to maintain air superiority is to have the best tech and pilots possible. Let's see how the European Union's air force stacks up against Russia's. Again, in terms of just numbers, Russia has the advantage. Russia's air force contains around 4,160 aircraft. This includes everything from fighter jets to helicopters. However, like with their tanks, many of the aircraft consist of the Cold War Soviet Union machinery that was built up in the 50s and 60s. The European Union's Air Force is made up of around 2,450 aircraft. Russia has almost double the number of aircraft as the European Union yet again, but Europe has access to two of the most deadly fighter planes on the planet. The French-made Dassault Rafale is able to hold its own in the skies in any dogfight or escort mission. However, it's the Eurofighter Typhoon that's the crown jewel of the EU's Air Force. The Eurofighter Typhoon is a collaboration between Britain, Germany, Italy, and Spain. It's often ranked in the top 10 of the most deadly fighter jets and is one of the European Union's greatest assets in air-to-air combat. However, Russia also has their own highly effective fighter jets. Both the Sukhoi Su-3 and the Mikoyan MiG-35 would give the Eurofighter Typhoon a run for its money. The Russian Air Force also has the Tupolev Tu-160 Blackjack at their disposal, which as far as bombers go can deliver massive amounts of damage across large distances. It's because of the large number of aircraft as well as competitive fighter jets and bombers that Russia also has a slight advantage in air combat over the European Union. At this point, you might be surprised by Russia's upper hand in land and air combat. But what about navies, though? After all, entire wars have been fought and won on the high seas. Each navy has around 600 ships at their disposal. However, some vessels are more important and powerful than others. Let's be clear, a naval battle between the European Union and Russia seems unlikely. Since Russia and Europe share a border of around 1,300 miles, it's much more likely that a war between the two militaries would take place on land and in the air. But for argument's sake, let's take a look at how their navies stack up. One of the most powerful naval vessels in any war is the aircraft carrier. They are like floating fortresses that contain miniature armies. Russia has one operational aircraft carrier at this point in time. The European Union has 4 between 3 of the countries in the pact. France and Spain both have 1 aircraft carrier while Italy has 2. The UK also has 2, but since they decided to leave the European Union, we cannot count those on the EU side. Even still, the European Union holds the higher number of carriers. Both the European Union and Russia have around 60 subs, although Russia has 33 nuclear submarines while France, which is the only country in the EU with nuclear submarines, only has 5. This is a clear advantage for Russia. Again, a naval confrontation between the European Union and Russia seems unlikely. But if something were to happen, Russia would have the advantage, with over 6 times more nuclear submarines than the European Union. This brings us to the scariest weapons in modern warfare, the nuke. In nuclear warfare, having more missiles does not necessarily mean you are more powerful. The European Union has around 290 nuclear warheads. That's enough to wipe out every major Russian city and much of the life in Asia and Europe. Russia has 1,326 deployed nuclear missiles and another 6,375 that are in reserve or being decommissioned. That's enough to pretty much wipe out all human life off the face of the planet. Either way, nuclear warfare will never end in a victory. The radiation, chemicals, and debris that would be swept across the planet would ensure that everyone loses in a nuclear war. We also know that in today's warfare, control of intelligence is important. Russia has an advantage on 2 fronts in this aspect. Ever since the launch of Sputnik 1 on October 4, 1957, Russia has had an ongoing space program. In fact, up until very recently, the United States was piggybacking off the Russian space program to get astronauts into the International Space Station. Compared to the EU, there is no contest. Russia has dominance in space. This would be important in all-out war because of satellite control for reconnaissance and communication. It's only a matter of time before space becomes militarized. Russia is in a much better position to take advantage of the militarization of space. All you have to do is look at the latest space missions for each agency. The most recent manned mission to space for Russia was the Soyuz MS-16 mission, which launched on April 9, 2020. The last European manned mission to space was never. The European Union has never launched their own rocket with a crew on it to space. Needless to say, Russia has a much more advanced space program. The other modern warfare component that Russia leads in is cyber warfare. It is no secret that Russia has conducted hacking operations into several countries' classified databases. Just recently, they stole secret intelligence from the Ukrainian government before applying pressure to their border. Russian hackers have also stolen millions of dollars from organizations around the world. Hacking groups may be independent from the Russian government, but oftentimes they are working in cahoots. Take the 2016 United States presidential elections, for instance. After several high-profile investigations, it was concluded that Russian hackers were actively trying to influence the presidential election and may have successfully done so. Russia has a long history of cyber warfare, while the European Union seems less engaged in this aspect of war. So we can conclude that in terms of warfare in cyberspace and outer space, that Russia has the upper hand. This would give them better intelligence and may allow Russia to cripple the European Union without even firing a shot. If Russia takes control of the EU's satellites and shuts down their internet capability, Europe could literally be in the dark. Does this mean that Russia would win the war between itself and the European Union? Probably not. There is one more war-ending weapon that the European Union has on its side: an alliance with the United States of America. In our scenario, we were comparing the militaries of the European Union and Russia by themselves. However, if war ever broke out between the two powers, allies would come to their aid. The European Union is part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO for short. This alliance includes 30 countries, one of which is the US. The United States and China are the only superpowers in the world and have the largest and most advanced militaries at this moment in time. If the European Union went to war with Russia, the United States would have to join them because of the NATO alliance. Russia would not be able to win a war against the combined militaries of the European Union and the United States. It would be game over. Russia does have alliances with other countries and could call on them to help support their war effort. However, the only alliance which ends up being tenuous at best is the Collective Security Treaty Organization. This is an intergovernmental alliance between Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Even with the support of their allies, Russia would still be no match for the combined strength of the European Union and the United States. When it comes down to it, if the European Union and Russia went head-to-head, it would be close. Russia has a slight advantage in terms of land and air forces. They also have a strong position for the future of warfare in space and online. However, since the European Union is part of NATO, if war broke out, the United States would come to their aid. In this scenario, there's no doubt that the European Union and its allies would decimate the Russian military. In a war without allies, though, Russia still reigns supreme in Europe as the top military power, and Europe could do little to defeat Russia in war. Now check out Russia versus United States. Who would win? Military.
Man, that video is crazy. I always like how it's always like countries just be like, you can see like it be going back and forth, like this country can do this, but this country got this, you know, it'd be like that and stuff like that. But yeah, if y'all like the video, like, comment, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you on the next one.
Heard them lasers talking now that we don't pay that no mind. Didn't need to watch and know that I'll be hearing no.